Hello to my Central Point Church of Christ family, to all of you out there in the cyber sanctuary. This is Evangelist Matthew Miles Sr. welcoming you to another online Bible study with the Central Point Church of Christ here in Bloomington, Illinois. We affectionately call the Bloom, for it is the place where the people of God are blooming in his righteousness and in his favor. Beloved, this is the Living as God's Kingdom Man series based upon the book written by Dr. Tony Evans, Kingdom Man. We welcome you back, brothers and sisters. And when I left you in our last time together, we were laboring under the theme, You've Got It. You've Got It. Talking about your personal responsibility as a kingdom man. Understanding your destiny as a kingdom man means fulfilling your divine design reason for being, your divine reason for being, to glorify God by advancing his kingdom. And brothers, that advancement of God's kingdom begin in your home. It begins in your home. Seasoned saints, listen. Fused within every kingdom man's urge to conquer ought to be an equally strong conviction to cover. Let me say that again, and you need to write that down. Fused within every kingdom's man urge to conquer, to be a hero, to get it done, ought to be an equally strong conviction for that man of God or kingdom man to cover. Cover what, Brother Miles? Those that dwell in his domain, those whom his reach cover, those whom he has influence with. All right? Those that are under his care, those whom he loves, those who look up to him for guidance and counsel. All right? Sensational saints, as a gospel preacher and as a student of the Holy Divine Word, this word of love, this word of salvation, I'm reminding of a sobering but yet challenging word by that great fierce apostle Peter in 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse number 8. Why don't you be turning there? We'll get there in just a moment. 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse number 8. But beloved, before we can appreciate the weight and the power of this significant verse of number 8 of 1 Peter 4, I find it necessary to open a window of your understanding of the historical backdrop of this apostle and his epistle. Saturated saints, it is said that the imprint of Peter upon the early church was stronger than any of the other original 12 apostles. He was it's stated historically, that he was the most prominent disciple during Jesus' lifetime. And the first 12 chapters of the book of Acts, that we affectionately call the Acts of the Apostles, are devoted to his ministry and to the church in the East. And two of the New Testament books bears Peter's name, 1st and 2nd Peter. Beloved, this letter that our text of consideration is housed in is one of the 7 general letters, and it is addressed to the 5 Roman provinces in Asia Minor, north of the Taurus Mountains. Those provinces were Pontus, Cappadocia, Galatia, Asia, and Bithynia. Now, the 7 letters, just for your own little sidebar note, because we stated that it's one of the 7 general letters. And so just for your own pleasure, those general letters are considered Hebrews, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and also the book of Jude. Let me give it to you again. The book of Hebrews, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and also the book of Jude. Now they're called general letters mainly because of their various authors and audiences that they were written to. Now notice the occasion of this letter. The occasion of this letter was persecution. Persecution in the area. And Peter is trying to encourage, equip, and prepare the readers for the difficult times ahead. And I might as well add, we are talking about quite severe times. Brothers and sisters, that is what I'm laboring to do, not only here today, But with every Bible class, with every online class, with every online devotion, with every sermon that I present, I'm feverishly trying to call man anthropos, both male and female. I'm desperately trying to call them to holiness to equip them for the difficult times of life. Well, if you might say, Brother Miles, I haven't had that much of a difficult time. Well, just keep on living. I tell you, like the late great Uncle Jed, Jed Hutton, he tell you, boy, just keep watching the sun come up and go down, and you will see the effects of life. You learn some things that you've never experienced before. So I tell you today that if you have not had the roughest times of your life or hard life, just keep on living. But the man of God's job is to equip you for the difficult times of life. And today, beloved, we're calling on the Ish, the male man, if you will, M-A-L-E, to understand and embrace the call that God has on his life, not to expose, not to abandon and hurt those whom God has blessed him to have in his domain and within his reach. But our call is for this man, this Ish, this male figure, is to cover their nakedness of sin, to cover those within his domain shame, to cover their mistakes, and to cover their bad choices. I wish I had some help here. And Peter tells man, the Ish, just how to do that which with a strong conviction of love. And I'm here to tell you, you will never cover the failures and the faults of your loved ones without a conviction of love. You have to have a conviction of love. But let me set up this chapter so you can feel the weight and the impact of our power verse number 8. In chapter number 1, verse 3 through 12, heaven is worth suffering for. That's the message that Peter is trying to render. That whatever you're suffering as a child of God, heaven is worth it. And then verses 13 through 25, he charges them and challenged them to be holy, to be holy. And then in chapter 2, verses 1 through 17, he declares that we are lively or living stones, chosen of God to build up the spiritual house of God. And then verses 18 through 25 of chapter 2, he states that we must suffer as Christ suffered. Yeah, you need to get the chip off your shoulder, take your hand off your hip, stop throwing the pity party. If you're going to be a child of God, and if Christ suffered, who are you? Who do you think you are? That you gotta, you allow the devil to pull you down in this depression because you having challenges and struggles in life. Honey, Jesus must not be your example. Because Peter makes it clear, if we're going to be a child of God, because Jesus suffered, we must suffer. In chapter 3, verse 1 through 7, we understand that we must focus on our true beauty, which is on the inside. Yeah. Now, it's not a sin to wear earrings. It's not a sin to get your hair done. It's not a sin for none of that. It's not a sin to wear some makeup. But listen, that's not who you are. That's what you wear. I think I said something. I said, that's not who you are. Your tips, fingertips and lips and hips. No, honey, that's what you wear. All right? Who you are is on the inside. All right? And then verses 8 through 22, he tells us, do the right thing in love for one another. Yeah. Then we come to our power text. In this chapter. It's housed in chapter 4, and the overarching theme of verses 1 through 11. The overarching theme is doing the will of God. That's what Peter is trying to share with us and get us to understand in verses 1 through 11 of 1 Peter 4, doing the will of God. And in verse 1 of chapter 4, he states, since Christ suffered pain physically, he says, get your mind right, and I'm paraphrasing, and understand that you too have to suffer. And the receipt, here it is, the receipt or the proof that your flesh have ceased from sin is that you didn't respond in your suffering. You did not respond with retaliation, but yet and still you submitted yourself, denied your flesh, and submitted yourself to humility in the will of God. That's your receipt for maturity. In verse number 2, he helps us to understand that we want to spend our life we don't want to spend our life trying to please ourselves, but instead pleasing God. Pleasing God. And then there's a question. Where are you headed in this, Peter? Where are you leading this man of God? The answer is Peter is preparing the man of God to be a coverer of those within his domain. Not an exposer, not one who abandons and one who hurts, but one who covers and who helps to heal and restore. In verse 3, Peter declares that you have had enough time in the things that ungodly people do. Remember, I'm paraphrasing. I'm saying it the nice way. He says you done enjoyed all of that sinful partying in your past. You know what it is, what immoral people do. Participating in lust and in drunkenness and wild parties and worshiping idols. Underline that thing about idols, because we're going to break that down and give it to us in our application today. But beloved, let me park my mule here for just a moment and help us, help our brothers out here. When Peter speaks to us today through the prophetic word concerning idols, for us today, we are not talking about simply graven images made out of iron, metal, stone, or wood. That's not what we're talking about. But let's look at it historically and bring it to our day so we can get a proper understanding, because there are some of us who still have idols today. First of all, we need to understand that anything that man puts before God, or anything he allows himself to neglect God for, has become an idol. Let me say that again. Anything, anyone that man puts before God and causes him to neglect God has become an idol. In days of old, the term idol, one reference is Leviticus 26:1, but it's all over. Graven images all over through the Old Testament, all through the Old Testament. But Leviticus 26 and verse 1, if you need a reference for this word idol, the strong reference number is 6459. 6459. And the Hebrew word is pasal. Pasal is the word, pasal. But it's spelled P-E-S-E-L. P-E-S-E-L. The word is pasal. And the word literally means image. A carved or a graven image. In Leviticus 26:1, we understand that the purpose of an idol was to worship it. Now hold on to that, because I told you there are some of us who have some idols today. No, we haven't carved out no images, but we have caused some things to become a distraction, some things that have caused us to neglect God, that we give more attention and homage to than we do God. All right? These are things, I want you to understand one thing about idols. These are things that's created by the hands of man. Now hold on to that. Idols are created by man. All right? And they're created by man. Watch this. Created by man, flesh, in order to give the flesh pleasure of his desire. In our modern time, online Oxford Language Dictionary yields the definition of idol as a person or a thing that is greatly admired, loved, or revered. A thing or a person that is greatly admired, loved, or revered. I'm telling you, I'm trying to tell you, brothers and sisters, that anything or anyone you greatly admire, that you love more, that you respect more, that you put before and above God, has become your God, small g. All right? Has become your God, and God despises it. God hates it. Listen to God as he emphatically rejects the idea of anyone putting anything before him. Exodus chapter 20 and verse number 5. Come there with me. Exodus chapter 20, verse number 5. In the King James, it reads this way. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them. Remember, the idea of an idol, or the purpose of an idol, was for worship. God said, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them. Who is them? Go to verse 4 and you'll see he's talking about images, which are idols. He says, not to serve them. He said, listen to God. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. Now let me tell you how jealous he gets. The Bible says, visiting the iniquities of the father, those who set up and worship these idols. God said, I get so angry, it's going to last from one generation to another generation, to another generation, to another generation. 4 generations, he says, I will visit the iniquities of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me. Listen, God declares that if you are so disposed, if you are so bold, if you so desire to begin to worship something else and admire something else and cherish something else greater than God, you hate God. That's what God declares. And I'm going to tell you, he's angry. So angry that he's going to visit. He visited, the Bible says, and we know this is prophetic from the old, but this is the principle of his anger. And it's long lasting. And I don't know about you, but I would not want to fall into the hands of an angry and especially a jealous God. Don't miss the real issue here. Don't miss the real issue. The real issue with idolatry is the fact of where you put your trust, your devotion, and your pleasure. See, it ain't the stone. It's not the wood itself. It's not the marble itself, the metal. It's the intent of it all. It's driven and it's conjured up and it's created because of what you put your trust in, where your devotion lies, and where you desire your pleasure from. The question today is, where is your hope? What is the most valuable thing in your life? It better be God. It better be God. Oh, it's so much more I can deal with there, but I just can't. I can't stay there. My time is almost up. But you remember Baal, don't you? Prophets of Baal, they erected this God. He had eyes, but he couldn't see. He couldn't see them. He had ears, but he couldn't hear their prayers. He had a mouth, but he could not talk in comfort. He had hands, but he could not comfort them and run to their rescue. He had legs, but he couldn't move. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I would not want to fall into the hands of a jealous God that I made jealous because I put things and people before him. Yeah, I told the church Sunday, those of you who ask for overtime on Sundays, God is angry. We're not talking about mandatory what you got to do. We're talking about where your desire is, where your heart is. And don't come talking about no bills you got to pay because you made those bills. And now you want to rob God of time. You've already robbed him. So, brothers and sisters, the question is, who do you value most? What do you value most? Do you value your soul and your relationship with God and your life after death? Or do you value the things that are still here on earth that's going to perish with this world when this world is burning up with fire? Those things that are valuable we put in safe places. Listen to Jesus himself again. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 through 21. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 through 21. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. Lay not your treasures upon heaven. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. There's no true security here. He says in verse 20, but lay them up in heaven, where rust and moth cannot corrupt, and where thieves cannot break through and steal. But he says, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, listen, you are not going to cherish God if he is not truly a treasure of your heart. In verse 4, Peter warns the believers that your friends will talk about you when you stop living a wild and drunken life. When you stop going to wild parties and you stop wilding out and acting stupid and crazy, your friends will talk about you. But that's okay. You're on your road. You're on your way to being a great coverer. You're on your way to being a great man of God, a good kingdom man. Peter says, don't worry because those friends, those same friends, and I like to call them frenemies, will have to answer to God in the day of judgment. So don't worry about people talking about, oh, you think you're better than us. Now, no, I don't think I'm better than you. I think I found something better than us. In verse 6, Peter says that the gospel was preached to those same wicked people, so that they too might may be talked about among men, but that they will be living according to God in the Spirit. So let them talk. Let folk talk. As long as you are living in the Spirit to please God, you're on your way to greatness. In verse 7, we're almost there to verse 8. He says that the end of the world is coming soon. Therefore, be dedicated, faithful, consistent in your prayer life. I don't know about you, but I just told the prayer line this morning. Have a 6:30 prayer line Monday through Friday. And I just told them this morning that the older I get and the longer I live and the more life I experience, the more I understand how precious prayer is. And Peter says that when you mature and you grow, you need to understand that your prayer life is valuable, man of God. Your prayer life is valuable. Your wife should see you spending time in prayer. Your children should see you spending time in prayer. Not just corporate prayer with the family, but they should walk up on you sometime. They should walk in on you. When it becomes a ritual, yeah, a church member should walk in on you. But then we get here to our principal verse. If I get on that, I'll go on off. In verse number 8 of 1 Peter 4 is our power verse. He says, and behold and above all things. In other words, New Living Translation says, the most important of all. But King James says, and above all things, have fervent charity. Underline that. We're going to break these terms down in the class will be yours. He says, above all things, have fervent charity. Some translation says love. He says, have fervent charity among yourselves. In other words, the New Living Translation says, continue to show deep love for each other. He says, have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity, love, shall cover, underline those terms, shall cover the multitude of sins. I got to close, but listen. But I must first unpack this impregnated verse here, this power verse, and give birth to some blessings for your soul to go home with, tune off with. Listen, notice the first word that Peter used is fervent. Fervent. Ectenes. Ectenes is the word. 1618 is strong reference number. The Hebrew word is, the Greek word is ectenes. And watch this. It means to stretch. Stretch. It shows an intent, constant, strenuous intensement. It means to have a zealous about your disposition. To be in a disposition of earnest, to have an earnest disposition. This word ectenes is a compound word. The first part of the word is ek, 1537, ek, ek. And ek means wholly out, not Holy, but Whollly, wholly out, which intensifies the second word, teino, Teino, Teino. And teino means to stretch, which also is the root of the English word tense or tension. All right, so ectenes literally means to be stretched out fully. When Peter says to have fervent charity, it's charity that's stretched out to the greatest degree. Do you see it, brothers and sisters? It's love stretched to the fullest degree. But it will never happen if it's not real love. You'll never see love stretched out to the fullest degree unless it's true love. Notice the word shall, because he says shall cover. The word shall, S-H-A-L-L, is a verb. But it's not just a verb, it's what we call an auxiliary verb, or in other words, a helping verb. And an auxiliary verb is used with another verb to show the verb's tense, and also sometimes to form a question. Shall indicates that something will happen. Something is inevitable. It cannot be avoided. So this fervent love, whatever about this fervent love, it cannot be avoided. Something is coming that's going to provoke this love, that's going to be in need of this love. Well, what is it? What is this verb intensifying? The word cover. 2572 is the strong reference number. 2572. And the word here is kalupto. 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 And kalupto means veil. It means hide, to conceal, to envelop. Watch this. It means to keep secret, to keep hidden, to cover over. Yeah, to conceal. Now, what is it that's going to need to be kept secret? Well, don't forget the definite article the, because that's pivotal here. He says, this fervent charity shall cover the multitude. Now, the definite article "the" is used as a function word to indicate that a following noun or noun equivalent is definite or has been, watch this, I like this part, or has been previously specified by context or by circumstances. All right? In the Oxford Language Dictionary, online dictionary, "the" refers to something assumed to be common knowledge. Now, what is this common knowledge that Peter is talking about that shall take place? Listen, he says that this great love shall cover the multitude of sin. Watch this, beloved. Multitude, 4128 is the strong reference number, 4128. The word there is plethos. Let me hear you say that. Plethos. All right. Multitude refers to a crowd, a great number, an assemblage. All right. It comes from the word pletho, which means to be full, to be full. And that's where we get our word plethora, which is a large or an excessive amount of something. So what is it that's great in number? What is it that's large in quantity that's going to need to be covered? And it is inevitable. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, as I close in one word, sin. Sin. 266. Hamartia. Hamartia is the word here for sin. Hamartia. And this word refers to failure in an ethical sense. It's missing the mark. And missing the mark is the idea of a bowman, an archer, who has a bow and trying to hit a bullseye, but he misses the bullseye. But how many of you know he could never have missed the bullseye if he wasn't at least in the game of trying to hit the bullseye? Yeah, that's what sin is. It's a missing of the mark. It is a guilt. Sin is a fault. And sometimes it comes about in deeds. Beloved, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I know you see it. I know you see it as our time comes to a close. But especially to my brethren, there will come a time when those who are under your domain, within your influence, is going to surely be overtaken by sin. Ain't no doubt about it. It's inevitable. Because there is a multitude of sin awaiting. And they are going to need your covering. But you can't do it unless you have a compelling, committed, consistent, true love for God first. And if you have a true, consistent, compelling, committed love for God, you'll have all of that for His Word. And His Word challenges us to be ready and equipped to cover those that are within our domain. There are many young men and women that are in street gangs now because they didn't have the covering of a man of God in their home. Some did not have a covering of a mother figure. It is vitally important that you meet your responsibility as a kingdom man. If you're not covered by God, you won't know how to cover those that are within your domain when they fall to sin. And they're going to fall because it is a great multitude awaiting in all shape, form, and sizes. Your job is to be ready to give a covering so that they might heal and return back to the place of safety. I commend you to God and the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among the sanctified. Until next time, may God keep you and bless you is my prayer. Take care of yourself. Share this link with someone else that they might too be encouraged on how to handle their business as a coverer of their domain. God bless you.